All right, all right, all right. Howdy, everybody. Welcome to the Sales Sherpa Live. My name is Scott Paulsen. I am the founder of Paulsen Coaching and the Sales Sherpa program for guiding your sales to new heights. I want to thank you for joining us today on this webinar. We've got a great crowd here today. We're streaming it live over YouTube, embedded into our Sales Sherpa website as well. And if you're joining us on the recording afterwards, we're glad that you took the time to join us and to dive into what we have going on today. Today's topic, very simple: secrets to closing more sales. You should be closing more sales and you know it. But what's broken? How do you do it? For years, I struggled with this same thing, the very same thing. I've been in sales almost 30 years now, but I almost didn't make it past 30 days. In those first 30 days, I thought I had to sell everybody. It was a very frustrating time of my life. I had just gotten out of college, take the first job that was offered to me because I hated interviewing, and I became a stockbroker here in Houston, Texas. And I had to prospect every day, study for my Series 7 test every day to get certified, and all the while generate leads and new accounts for my supervising broker. Well, the first 30 days were such an exercise in frustration. I almost quit until I found one book, and that one book changed the trajectory of my career. And I was able to generate leads, and then I was able to start closing some sales and able to start making some money. But then I found out about a year later that I had hit a ceiling, and that I couldn't figure out why this ceiling existed. And I was getting plenty of leads, and I was closing a certain percentage of them, but my sales just weren't getting higher and higher. I wasn't getting to the level that I wanted to get to. I had to break through, and I did not know how. And that's when I went upon a multi-year endeavor in learning sales techniques, sales approaches, methodologies. I would consume all that I could get my hands onto. I would read just about every book, take just about every webinar. Well, back there was a seminar. Books on tape. Back then we had the Tom Hopkins and the Zig Ziglars. We had those guys. This is back in the early 90s, mid 90s, right? And I would take whatever training, sales training I could take. And finally I discovered a key. And the key was not in what you would think it was. And what we're going to go through today is really those keys, those secrets that took my sales to new heights and to new levels. And it's those same keys that I use in the Sales Sherpa program to train salespeople and sales teams to break through their barriers, to get to their sales to new heights and new levels so that they can achieve the success they want to achieve and live the lifestyles that they want to live. All right, so with further ado, before I jump into things, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to do a quick overview. We have coming up the Sales Sherpa Masterclass. It's next week, April 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th. It's 4 days. Don't worry, it's not 4 full days. It's like 3 hours on each day, okay? And normally, this program runs at about $1,500 per person. However, we've got it on sale, introductory price of $150. And I know that 150 is not showing up too good in the slide on the live stream. It looks good in the PowerPoint, but not on the live stream. We'll have to fix that on the next go around. But trust me, that says $150. Let me just boom this up here for you. Boom, $150 for this sales training program. And in this sales training program, we'll go over it a little bit later, but I want you to anchor your thought right there. $150 on what you're going to see. Is that worth it for me to break my sales up into new heights, into new levels of greatness? All right, with no further ado and no further delay, let's jump into this, what we're going to be covering today. So there are certain secrets, certain keys to increasing your sales that you can implement easily to start your program of breaking through to higher levels. Today's agenda, we're going to cover 5 of these. The first one is that this faulty mindset that sales is a numbers game. And that I've heard this since day one in my career. And many sales professionals are told the same things by so-called thought leaders or sales managers or sales executives that sales is a numbers game. Well, you know what? Those sales leaders, those sales managers, those sales executives, they tend to adopt and buy into this mindset that sales is a numbers game. But we're going to explore this a little bit further, and you'll learn why it really isn't and why that's just lazy thinking. Second, we're going to pull out your calculators and we're going to get into the nitty gritty of what the true value of your leads is. I know you probably got a number circulating around in your mind. Well, what are they worth? What's the value of that? Well, guess what? It's probably not that number. It's probably much, much higher. Okay, and after we get to that much higher number, we'll move on to a discussion on secret number 3 here, which is the importance of win rate and why it is the most important metric for any sales organization. Should be the number one thing that anyone monitors and manages. Okay? Should be the number one thing. After we get into that and why it's so important, then we're going to move on to number 4. And I tell you, salespeople hate to talk about number 4, sales coaching. But I'll tell you what, why it should not be ignored, why it has to be a part of every sales organization, part of their process. It has to be. It's an absolute necessity. And then finally, we saved the best for last. We're going to put it all together. We're going to put all this together into process, pipeline, and methodology. So make sure you stick around until the end because you certainly don't want to miss that. All right, without any further delay or ado, let's just dive right in to this first topic today. Number 1, why sales is not a numbers game. Look, this saying, as I said, this saying is as old as the sales profession itself. And it just passes for wisdom without much critical thought applied to it, especially for those individuals, those sales professionals, those sales managers, those sales executives who want a quick fix to their sales woes, to fix their problems. Okay. However, this is one of the most common mistakes made by salespeople, sales teams, and selling companies is to focus on the numbers game or activity. They focus on activity rather than the results of their activity. They think the results, okay, it's just an after effect of activity. Well, if you're managing for results, you're managing behind the curve. So people try to move ahead of the curve and they think they're managing for activity will do that. But it doesn't. It just puts them in the wrong mindset and into the wrong game. Now, here's why all of that is a problem. Let's just take a quick look at this. Okay, we have here the hamster wheel of activity, the numbers game. It is a veritable hamster wheel of activity, and it's focused on the wrong thing, which is usually like, how many calls did you make? How many emails did you send out? How many meetings did you book? How many presentations did you make? How many texts did you get out the door today? How many quotes are out there? How many proposals? It's focusing on that activity. Now, granted, those activities lead to sales, but let me ask you this. How often does a cold call or a cold email or a spam text close a sale and make you money? Now, sure, the activity is needed, and you and your company, you already spend valuable time and energy and money to produce your current lead flow using certain marketing activities, Facebook ads, social ads, TV ads, whatever it may be, radio ads, carrier pigeons, smoke signals. I don't care. You're using marketing somehow to create a lead flow. So it's time to shift the focus onto the right thing, which is really the result of that lead flow. And I'm not talking about the closed sales, but I'm talking about the ratios. And to help bring home this concept of focusing on the right results rather than the activities, pull out your calculators. We're going to jump on over to secret number 2. Secret number 2, which I've already mentioned, is the true value of a lead. Why is this even important? Now, sure, you want to make money. Sure, you want to become more profitable and you want to grow faster. But why do you really want to improve your results? Now, I'm not asking about, what are your life goals and ambitions? It's about the reason, the importance of those reasons, okay? The value of those reasons. And it's more than just, oh, just to take that vacation. What is the value of being able to get away? What is the value of being more profitable? Okay? So when you kind of get a sense of the value, what it brings to you, all the benefits that accrue to you because you're closing more sales, then we can start getting into the mindset of what's the value of that lead. And so let's be just ask again, or ask for what is the value of the leads that are currently being generated for you right now? What's the value to you? What's the value to your business? And it is not what it cost you. It's not what you paid for them. Here's an example. This example is an actual case study from a client of mine. I'll just call them Acme Corporation. We went through this analysis with them and we calculated the lifetime value of their customer, LVC. Now, LVC, the lifetime value, is an estimation of the total economic value that an average customer brings to you and your business during the entire course of your relationship with them. So here's this example here, Acme Corporation. In this case, we calculated the average annual revenue per customer. Very simple to do. Get your total sales revenue, divide it by the number of customers, and you got your average. Okay? Then we took the net profit margin. In this case, that net profit margin was about 40%, 39.5. Is that what it says? Yep, 39.5. Okay. We calculated that net margin and then afterwards multiplied it by, the average revenue per customer, and then you get your average annual net profit per customer. This is the economic value that each customer is contributing to you and your company on an annual basis. But now in the case of Acme Corporation, they're not a one and done kind of sales organization. They have ongoing relationships with their customers who continually buy from them. And so we looked at their history, and the average customer stayed with them or stays with them on average about 5.5 years. I think it's 5.6. Yep, 5.6 years. So we took that average annual net profit per customer, multiplied it by 5.6 years, and we come up with that $13,044.20. That is the net economic value that Acme Corporation's average customer contributes to them. So, what's the value of the lead to them? Is it that $13,000? Well, of course it's not, because not every lead turns into a customer. But it is very easy to go back and calculate what percentage of leads actually became customers. Let's say it took 100 leads for this one customer. Well, that's kind of a high number. Let's say 3 leads to a customer. Took 3 leads to a customer. Divide this by 3, and that's your value of a lead. Now that's a lot more than what they paid for it. If it was 3 leads to 1 close, that's about a what? $4,322, something like that. $17, $3,417 value of each lead. That's the value of each lead. Were they paying that for it? No, they're probably paying somewhere closer to $30, $25, $30 per lead if we calculated that out. So how do you value your leads? If you're valuing your leads at that, what you pay for them, that $25, $50 mark, as opposed to what they're actually producing for you, that $3,500, the value that it creates for you and your company. And if you're a salesperson, guess what? Just take your commission rate, that $3,500 of the lifetime value of that customer or the value of that lead, and just take your commission rate times that. And if you're getting paid a third on what you're selling, if you're getting paid a quarter on what you're selling, if you get paid half, 10%, whatever, now you're getting somewhere from $1,000 to $1,500, $2,000 is the value of those leads that your company's given to you. We've got to stop looking at these leads as, well, I paid $25 for that lead. Ha ha ha. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. The value of that lead, well, the value of that lead is much, much greater than that. That leads us to the next important key here. Secret number 3, win rate. The importance of win rate. And this ties directly back. This will directly affect the cost and the value of your leads. Okay. Now, for this quick analysis, I'm going to be referring to a great study that came out of the Rain Group, which shows that salespeople, we're talking about the entire universe of sales professionals in the world, regardless of their industry or geography, they will generally fall into one of 3 categories. And as you see here, going from left to right, you've got your average performer and your top performer and your elite performer. Now, they break down like this. Let's see here. Move forward. Here we go. 73% of all salespeople fall into average, which makes about sense. You got 68% of a bell curve distributions right around the mean. Well, you skew that a little bit to the side, and you got 73 are the average performers. 20% reach that top performing level, and we'll get into what distinguishes them here in a little bit. But then we've got that rarefied category of elite performer all the way to the right, and only 7% of all salespeople ever break into that category. And it doesn't matter what industry they're in, where they're selling, what they're selling, or to whom they're selling. It can be B2B, it can be B2C. You can go to business or business to consumer. Now, the results in these 3 key metrics have wide disparities between them. So we want to take a very quick look at them, starting with our average performers. Now, average performers, we're going to be looking at 3 key metrics here. The first metric is win rate, or I'm sorry, quota attainment. And we'll see here that average performers on the very top, quota attainment. Average performers, let me just blow this up for you, or as one of my IT professionals used to say, I'll embiggen it for you. The quota attainment for an average performer, they make quota 57% of the time. I mean, let's just say 50-50 or 60-40. Let's give them benefit of the doubt. 60% of the time, an average performer is reaching their sales target. 40% of the time, they're missing it. They make it 1 month, they miss it the next. They make it 1 quarter, they miss it the next. They make it 1 year, they miss it the next. You get the picture. They're a roller coaster. Now, the variance may be real tight. They're 5% over, 5% under, or the worse that they are, maybe they're 10% under, 20% over. The variances can be anywhere. The second thing we want to look at is the margin capture. We see here that margin capture defined is how much of the full selling price or the full margin is that salesperson capturing. So if they've got a margin capture, in this case, like 56%, that means on 56% of their deals, they're getting full margin capture. They're not discounting, which means they're discounting on the rest of those deals. 44% of the time, they're discounting. And then look at their win rate. This is the all-important metric here, the king metric of all sales metrics. Their win rate is 40%. They're winning 4 out of 10 deals. And to win those 4 out of 10 deals, they're discounting 40% of the time, 44% of the time. They have to sell on price more often than not. Okay, so how does this compare to the other categories, the top performers and the elite performers? The top performers, as we see here, they have 100% quota attainment. By definition, a top performer has to capture or has to attain quota 100% of the time. Not 99, not 90, not 85, but 100% of the time. They've got to capture or attain quota. Now, we'll also see here that their margin capture is quite improved as well. They're not discounting. They're only discounting 25% of the time. They're capturing 75% of the margins that are available to them. So they're only discounting 25% of the time. And then look at their win rate. 62%. They're winning almost 2 out of every 3 deals. That's fantastic. How many people would love to have that? We'd all love to have that. And that's the top 20% there, or the 20% of all sellers. But there's still one more category here. And if these kind of results don't get you into elite, what kind of results do? Well, let's just take a look. For these elite performers, the creme de la creme, the top of the top. Looky here. Again, we're seeing 100% quota attainment, always meeting or beating quota, capturing 91% of their margin, which means they're discounting less than 10% of the time. And then look at that win rate, 73% average win rate. They're winning 3 out of 4 deals. So tell me, that sounds great, doesn't it? Wouldn't you want to be an elite performer? At the very least, wouldn't you want your sales team to have top performing sales metrics? Of course you would. We all want that. That's why people get into sales in the first place, is to do great things and to help people. You got a product and a service that you're representing, that you're selling out to the public. It helps people. Hopefully, it does great things. People buy it. We want our salespeople to be successful with that. And if they're not starting to get into these top performer and elite performing kind of results, then they're leaving a lot of money on the table. How much money? Let's just take a quick look and see. Here we have 2 graphs here, estimated income and then cost per lead. On the left, our estimated income. And just for ease of numbers, we see that on the left, if an elite performer is making $100,000, then the average performer in the same circumstance, in selling the same thing for the same company to the same customers, is only making $56,000 or $55,000. That is half. Let's look at it the other way. If you were an average salesperson, if you're only closing 40% of your deals, maybe you are making $100,000 a year or 6 figures. Fantastic. A lot of people do. A lot of average salespeople do. You could almost double that income. If you're a company and you're looking at your organizational win rate and it's only 40%, you got to look at this and say, man, there's so much more that we could be getting out there without having to discount. There is price elasticity, as according to economics. You don't have to discount the price to get the higher volumes. You don't. You got to have better sales. You got to have better sales process, better sales methodology, better sales. Now, the other side of it is the cost per lead. If it was costing me $250 per lead to get to get an average customer, now that cost per lead drops all the way down to about 130. It drops about in half as well, applying the same metrics, all other things considered, which means conversely, the value of my leads can double. So if I have, if my average sales organization, if my average sales organization has a true lead value of $1,500, they're closing 1 out of 3 sales, they can double that lead value by closing 2 out of 3 sales. That win rate, they double their win rate, they double the value of the leads, they cut the cost of leads in half, and they double income. It's just simple math. And that's why win rate has to be the number 1 metric on any sales organization's radar. Nothing else matters. All other things contribute to the win rate. In fact, a great win rate can make up for poor marketing. If your marketing just isn't generating enough leads, well, let's shift to win rate. Let's look at what that win rate is in an organization or for a salesperson. If you're only closing 4 out of 10, look, we got to get that higher. We got to get that higher. Okay, so the best way to lower your cost of sales is to improve win rate. The best way to double your income is to improve your win rate. And the best way to double your revenue is to improve your win rate. Sounds simple, doesn't it? But just as my old Swedish granny used to say, just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy. So, how can we improve win rates, Scott? Well, I'm glad you asked. That brings us to the final two secrets in our presentation today. Power of coaching. Again, I told you salespeople hate talking about this, but this is a major, major performance booster. This graphic comes from research that was done at HubSpot a couple years ago, and it confirms what Rain Group study says about win rates. Okay. Now, according to the HubSpot study, sales teams that receive a minimum of 3 hours of sales coaching per month will produce 161% more wins. Their pipeline will have 26% more opportunities in it by dollar volume or number. And they're going to have about 19% fewer losses. That's very significant. Okay. This is compared to teams that don't get coaching. Very, very significant. So, how does that correspond? Check this out. That Rain Group study showed that 57% of elite performers, 57% of them prioritize sales coaching time. They want to get better. They're eager to get better. They want feedback. For whatever reason, maybe they're money hungry. Maybe they've just got things that they want to do in their life. Maybe they want to retire early. For whatever reason, maybe they just have that drive to be the best, right? Okay, but they're eager to get better. However, only 28% of average performers prioritize sales coaching. They're the ones who throw it to the wayside. Check your own mindset here, okay? If you're a salesperson, check your own mindset. Are you eager for sales coaching? Let's put this in sales analogies. Whether you are, a baseball, let's put this in a sports analogy. Whether you're a football fan, a baseball fan, a soccer fan, whatever, hockey fan, okay? We've got players out there. We've got professional sports players, sports athletes, professional athletes, right? Who are making tens of millions of dollars per year. Now, if you're a salesperson making that kind of money, fantastic. I'm betting you're not. I'm not yet. But if these elite athletes making that kind of money get coached, and they're always getting coached day in, day out. They got batting coaches, they got throwing coaches, they got, hitting coaches, they've got line coaches, they got strength coaches, they got nutritional coaches, they got coach. They're coached out the wazoo. You see a correlation here? Coaching helps produce results. The right kind of coaching helps produce even better results. So, as these greats want to get coached and want to get better, they've got to be continually coached in specific things. And it's not just an accountability. You can get an accountability coach. It's fantastic. There's 12-step groups. You can go get that in a heartbeat, and it won't cost you anything. I say that facetiously. But that brings us to the last secret of closing more sales, which is process, pipelines, and methodology. Now, a bunch of stuff is crammed into this secret. And this is where the sales greats get coached a lot, in these three different areas: process, pipelines, and methodology. Okay. Now, the importance of it all is that you see how it all just will fit together inside of an organization to produce better results. So let's start this with a typical buyer's journey. And this is a marketing term. If you've done any kind of work on marketing 101, or if you any digital marketing, you got an ad, you got an ad agency, or you got in-house marketing people, you'll hear this all the time. What's your buyer's journey? Well, generally, your buyers will go through three basic stages. The first of which is the awareness stage. And that's where your buyer becomes aware that they have a problem, a challenge, or even an opportunity that they want to take advantage of. The next stage is the consideration stage. It's where they start thinking about that problem, defining that opportunity. They're researching it. They may be considering their options, the choices that they have in either fixing that problem or taking advantage of the opportunity at hand. And then in the decision stage, the buyer is evaluating those options and then deciding on the best solution or the best course of action, which sometimes can be nothing or none, right? Or if they're looking at different solutions, they're also deciding on who should do this. Should we do it internally or should we get somebody to do it for us? Somebody to deliver that. All right, so that's our basic buyer's journey. Now, sales process, let's insert a generic sales process over this to correspond with it. This sales process does not map out the exact step-by-step and decision points, but a sales process will follow that buyer along their journey and decide what needs to happen at each stage. So at the beginning of this generic sales process it starts when a lead is generated. Boom. Hey, somebody raised their hand. They filled out a form. They requested a demo. They booked a call. Okay, somehow they got onto a salesperson's radar screen. And the next step in their sales process is, okay, salesperson's got to qualify it. That's what happens usually when they have their first interaction with a salesperson. A result of that qualification, that buyer may want a presentation or a demo, whatever the next stage of the step is. Let's say in this case, it's a presentation. They're going to do a demo. And then at the demo, they'll either decide to move forward or not. They'll handle some resistance. And then as they go through handling resistance, they'll be closing. And then after closing is retention. Very generic. This does not map out each step in their process. I've got a different presentation for that, getting into that nitty gritty. Now, let's overlay on that a sales pipeline. And we'll see here that different stages of this sales pipeline, which are most commonly used for tracking opportunities, for tracking leads, especially in CRM tools. We see that these different stages of the sales pipeline directly correspond to steps in the selling or in the sales process. Okay, it helps to just keep track of numbers and make sure that nobody's really falling through the cracks. It also helps point out, very importantly, ratios. Over here to the far right of your screen, won, lost. How many won? How many lost? We want to track those numbers. Remember, we want win rate, the all importance win rate. If we're not tracking our opportunities and keeping track of those numbers, won versus lost, then you're falling behind the curve and you can't manage what's even more important next on this, which is the selling methodology. Selling methodology is how prospective buyers are moved through their journey, move through the process, and move through the pipeline. It's the how behind it all. It can be one of many different methodologies, like the Challenger sales methodology, Sandler training. You've got spin selling, advanced spin selling, solution selling, advanced solution selling. You name it. There's a bunch more that go unnamed here. Okay, all sorts of them, all sorts of methodologies. Now, the methodology is where win rate and margin capture have the most potential to be improved. There's nothing, there are things that you can do to your process that can help, help reduce friction through the pipeline, but the pipeline itself can't do it. And the buyer's journey itself can't do it. You can do a little, we can streamline sales process to help the buyer have an easier time going through the pipeline, but it is in the selling methodology where 75 to 80% of the improvements will be made and to your win rate. That's the vast majority of it. So we're going to take a look at one of the most prolific selling methodologies ever created in the history of the world. And I mean that. And it is the Sales Sherpa methodology. I'd like to take credit for this, that I came up with this, but I didn't. This is nothing new. It is not a new invention. This sales methodology is based upon the most prolific selling methodology in the history of the world that was developed in the late 1960s by none other than Xerox. They spent the equivalent of about $100 million researching the psychology of buyers' behavior, and they called it selling by need satisfaction. Now, the results of it were just enormous. They were profound because, as I said, they had the most prolific sales force in history. In under 10 years, their army of door-to-door salespeople captured a near monopoly in their market. So much so where they just have such astronomical events that they were pulled before the Federal Trade Commission and Congress, and they were threatened to be broken up as a monopoly. And once after they display, hey, it's it's just because our salespeople are that great. There's competing products out there. There's products that compete very well. We're just better at selling them. Only after they displayed that were they able to go about and exist. All right. Now, every other sales training program that I mentioned before, I don't care if it's Sandler, I don't care if it's Insight Sales, I don't care if it's Challenger, I don't care if it's Spin or Solution Sales. They all took a piece of this back in the 1980s and in the 90s, okay, because they were all former Xerox guys themselves, former Xerox people, and they tried to make a whole methodology out of one piece of it. Well, this is the revitalization of the whole thing. Here's how the real version works. The first stage in this is what we call identifying buyers' needs. Okay, it all begins right here. And this is more than just a simple, hey, how can I help you today? This stage requires a mastery of questioning skills so that a salesperson can clearly identify buyers' needs and create need awareness in their buyer. And it's all done through a strategic approach to questioning. It's not effective enough to say, oh, Mr. Buyer, you need A, B, C, and D. Telling somebody what they need has less of a closing effect than guiding somebody, gaining that agreement that here's what they need. If they come to the conclusion themselves, they will be more invested emotionally, intellectually, and then soon to be financially in that solution. So this requires, like I said, a strategic approach to questioning or the sales interview. And then part of that is buyers uncovering the motives and the drivers behind the need. Here's an example. Just because somebody's hungry doesn't mean that they want turkey. Obviously, many other variables come into play, such as time of day. Am I eating breakfast, or am I eating lunch, or am I eating dinner? Or if I'm a hobbit, is this my second breakfast or third lunch or whatever else? Okay. But learned needs also have a very keen effect on this, such as, how has the buyer satisfied their needs for this in the past? If I'm buying breakfast, do I satisfy that need with waffles, cereal, biscuits, gravy, eating in, going out? What have I done in the past that forms my behaviors? See, all buying is done habitually. It's a matter of behavior. And getting a buyer to buy something new requires interrupting a habit and reestablishing a new one. Now, assuming that a buyer is going to buy just because they have a need is a fatal flaw in many sales methodologies. Just assuming that they're ready to buy because I'm hungry, it's a pitfall. It's an enormous pitfall. It's a huge mistake. Much more about those buyers' needs have to be learned before moving on. And they have to be learned so that we can move on to that second stage, which is establishing priorities. Now, in this phase, we realize as sellers that everybody has multiple needs going on at any given moment. I've got a need to deliver a compelling presentation webinar. I've also got a need to get something to drink. I'm a little thirsty right now. I'm a little parched. I start thinking about, the stuff I got to do after the webinar. I still have dozens and dozens of needs going on. It's just that right now, my one focus is this webinar. Our buyers are no different. And just because a buyer has a need doesn't mean that they're ready to take action on it. That's where many, many sales methodologies fall flat. That's where they fail. And it's where many sellers fall flat and fail as well. Okay. Only energized needs, prioritized needs that demand the buyer's attention get acted on. And it is our sales Sherpa seller who learns how to energize buyers' needs into that compelling priority that just cannot be ignored anymore, that they've got to take care of it before doing anything else, and doing it in a way that satisfies the buyer in a non-pressuring way. Okay. Now, only after a seller has confirmed a need and activated to a priority do they ever give, well, let me give you an example. I guess I'll give you an example. Sorry, I was going to skip ahead there. Um, Again, using my breakfast example, just because I'm thirsty right now doesn't mean that I'm running off to Starbucks to get a coffee. I've got some water right here, right? So I can use that. There's options. And so we've got to have our sellers teach, we've got to have our sellers be able to energize those needs into priorities and take that action on. And then after that happens, let me now move on. Then we can move into the next phase, which is presenting solutions. If a seller starts trying to come up with a solution or present a solution to a buyer before they have gained agreement on that need and its priority, you're whistling in the wind. It is going to be most likely to fail as a presentation. And even if it's the right solution for that buyer, again, psychologically on some level has not bought into it that they even need a solution, let alone whatever it is that the solution that you're providing. So this by itself will save so much frustration. Please write it down. Remember this if you remember anything. No presentation until needs and priorities. Keep it in order. Okay? It is a total crapshoot if you just start jumping into presentation. This is where most average sellers lose it. They hear, oh, I'm looking for a new car. Oh, great, I got 20 of them on the lot. Let me show you this one. This one looks really cool. Being a little facetious, but you get the picture. Start diving into a presentation, telling the buyer what they need, and put yourself in the shoes of that buyer. Have you even taken 5 minutes to ask me what I like or why I need this or present me alternatives or anything of that nature? If I'm that buyer, I'm not listening. I'm tuned out. And guess what? That's what happens more often than not. And sellers who do this actually deliver weak presentations, what I call the spaghetti bowl. They've thrown a spaghetti up against the wall, throwing everything at them, hopefully something sticks. Some people call it the data dump. We used to call that the data dump when a stockbroker used to just start diving into a stock. Data. And I love this company because it's got great earnings potential. They're in this new market and the market's expanding by 50% a year. And their earnings are going. It's like, shut up, man. Be quiet. You're just dumping data. What we want to get into is what's called a lock and key solution. And in our lock and key solution, it's only possible after having a thorough knowledge of the buyer's needs and the priority and why it's such a priority. The other part of it is now this, okay, that's easily done for simple products, simple sales. The more complex the products, the more complex the sale, the more thorough that analysis really needs to be. Okay. Here's another thing about a lock and key solution. It focuses the only on those features of a seller's product or service that meets the high priority needs of the buyer. Nothing else. Nothing else. Okay? If a buyer is buying a software package and they have 4 high priority things that need to get done, it's got to accomplish 4 things. It's got to, it's got to reconcile the books. It's got to prepare financial reports. It's got to be user friendly, and it's got to fit in the budget. Great. They may have some nice to haves. Oh, and if it's flexible, and they may have 5, 10 other, 20 other, things on their wish list. But focus on these 4. They don't care about these other features. Okay. If we focus on those high priority needs of the buyer and meeting those, then it's so easy to move our buyers into the next stage, which is implementation. Now, this is where closing happens, okay? And it's called implementation for a reason, because we adopt a profound, seminal sea change mindset in the way that closing happens in this methodology when compared to most other selling methods, because it is centered around the buyer's stress level. I'll show you how. Traditional sales models will build up buyer stress throughout the entire process. It'll go through the entire process. They just keep on building stress and stress and stress. It's the high pressure. We're all familiar with the high pressure sale. Now, not everybody's so high pressure, but and high pressure to one person is low pressure to another. However, if the seller continually ramps up the pressure even to the point of closing, then we have the foundation for a relationship with our customer that's built on mistrust. It's built on stress. It's adversarial in nature. And it's even reflected in the terminology that some of these other programs use, overcoming objections. It's a common phrase in throughout sales literature. It's part of the lexicon. But again, it denotes an adversarial relationship between the buyer and the seller. The seller in this model does not get any stress release until after the sale is closed. It's a widespread approach done over decades and decades that has tarnished and damaged the sales profession for decades. And it needs to change. It needs to end. However, sellers who have a different approach to it will stand out. Now, contrast it to what we do in the sales Sherpa methodology. We see right here, we become active managers. Number one, sales Sherpas become active managers, just consciously aware and actively manage their buyer's stress level at all times. So even as stress is naturally being built up during the buying process, if the seller does a good job of uncovering needs and the priorities and making that lock and key solution that matches right up with what that buyer was looking for, then instead of having to pressure their buyer into making a decision, that seller actually feels the reduction in stress by having that solution presented to them and knowing that it's the right one, and that stress just immediately, I say, drops off. But there's no added pressure required to force that buyer into a decision. Now, when closing is done this way, it makes our final stage of the process even easier. And that's the managing relationships stage. This is arguably the most important stage of the selling process, but it's also the most neglected by sales professionals. And that's the managing relationships. And here's why. Because most sales professionals are pressuring their buyers into a decision, and they know it on some level, consciously or subconsciously. And guess what? After they're done with that, they have a subconscious reluctance to talk to that buyer again because they know they've just perpetrated some kind of aggression on them. Okay. Now, I said this is most important because even even some of the what I call the big seminar sales pros, the 10x Cardone guys, right? Even they know that the relationship is even important. They say making a second sale is easier than the first sale. Well, guess what? It is 5 times much more costly to get a new customer than it is to keep an existing customer. We spend so much time and energy as an organization, as a sales team, as a sales professional to get one customer. Why do we want to lose them? The relationship, even if their purchase is once every 3 years, if you're a car dealer and you're only getting your average buyer is only coming in at once every 3 years or every 5 years, get the relationship going, lock them in. Okay. Sales pros must establish a feedback system with their buyers and keep those lines of communication open because it's much easier to close that second sale than it was the first sale. All right. Put it all together. Put it all together, and you have a complete selling methodology, the result of which is that sales pros will have a well-defined pathway to help them guide their buyers into low stress decisions. High pressure sales are a thing of the past. It's a far better way of selling, and it's going to lead you to, it's going to lead you to better performance. If you're determined to raise your performance, this focuses on those key things that matter most, like margin capture, selling on value, not on price, like our average performers do generally. And most importantly, win rate. How can I get better win rates in my selling activities? Well, you may be asking, how do I get started on this? How do I do all of this? How do I implement it? Well, you know what? I'm glad you asked. Because, as I mentioned before, we have the Sales Sherpa Masterclass starting next week. I mentioned this at the beginning of our webinar. This will get you off to a tremendous start. What you'll learn are all the ins and the outs of the Sales Sherpa program, including all of the tools that are needed to complete a thorough needs profile, a needs analysis of your buyers, how to build that strategic line of questioning. We use a tool called the Favor tool, and we question for each of our customers. We help them come up with basically, it looks like a decision tree, but it's really a questioning tree to help sellers ask the right questions to guide their buyers to the decisions that will help them the most. It also helps you develop the best strategies and tactics to energize needs into priorities. Pressure tactics are becoming a thing of the past, and there has to be other ways. And becoming a partner with your buyer and understanding their business and the factors affecting it are usually the most effective. Okay. It'll also teach you how to craft your lock and key business case solution based on the previous, the previous two stages, needs and priority. And also give you a framework on how to actively manage buyer stress in a way that does make closing the easiest thing in the world for you and your buyers. And that feedback system that we talked about, it'll help you to increase on follow up with existing customers and really just help you close more deals. So there's information about this in the link above. You can click the link, go to the sales page, check out the program, look at some of the results. And once again, like I said, usually we train people for $1,500, but now we're doing it at 90% off to kick off our online version here. 90% off or $150, 4 days, 10 hours, and higher win rates. All right, that does it for me. I want to thank you so much for joining me in this presentation. It has been a true joy. If you have questions, I didn't see any coming up in the live chat there. Let me just do one quick look. Didn't see any coming up in the live chat. But any questions, feel free to hit me up directly on LinkedIn or Facebook or email, whatever you might have. Again, my name is Scott Paulsen. Thank you for joining me, and